Joining me now in the studio is Kristen McDonald Rivet, who is running for the 8th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, right now you are state senator.
I am.
How excited are you to be running for this congressional district?
Yeah, this is an amazing part of Michigan. It's an amazing part of the country. I just feel incredibly honored to run for this. I spent my whole life in Michigan, and my husband and I have raised our 6 kids here in this district, and I am just excited to represent it, excited to work with people across the district, and really work for working families, which is just a tremendous opportunity.
One of the things that we talked about back in August on that primary night, we talked to many of your supporters, and one of your missions is to continue the child care costs and lowering those for families, because those working families are the ones who are suffering across the United States. What is your plan if elected and when you head to DC?
So we know that families in mid-Michigan in particular have been hit really hard by just the cost of everything. I have a 14-year-old boy at home, and he drinks 2 gallons of milk a week. I really pay attention to the price of milk and the price of groceries, and that's really common for families, whether we're talking about here in Genesee County, Bay, Saginaw. These are things that I hear about every day, and we have to really focus on costs, childcare being a huge piece of that. So I know as a mom of 6 kids, childcare really matters, right? So in Michigan, we've lost 40% of our childcare capacity in the last 10 years. The average childcare center has a wait of over 2 years in order to get in. So what we really need to do is to put more cash in people's pockets. So right now I have a package of bills in the state legislature that will create a child tax credit that gives families with kids under the age of 3 $5,500 extra a year to be able to help pay for those costs. At a federal level, we can go back to the expanded child tax credit. That cut our child poverty rate in half the year that we had that. You know, these are the kinds of very practical, very important things that we can do, and we can do quickly at the federal level that will really make a meaningful difference for families here.
This seat currently held by Congressman Dan Kildee, who decided not to seek re-election, but you know, he is so well known in this community. What policies do you plan on continuing of his if you are elected?
Yeah, Dan Kildee has been an amazing representative for us. I was honored when he came out and endorsed me, and he did it early, right? And I think it's because we have the same approach. We are both very pragmatic. Neither one of us are the kind of political leaders that create drama in order to get that viral social media moment that we see too much of, but just roll up our sleeves and get things done. So in the state Senate, I was the author of the Working Families Tax Credit, the largest tax cut for working families in Michigan's history. That's very much like the policies that we've seen from Dan Kildee of fighting for everyday people, which we need, frankly, more of that. I am absolutely committed to this region, very committed to Genesee County, and you know, Dan has always talked about his hometown. My hometown is Bay City, but we're all in this together. I was endorsed by labor really early, the UAW, the AFL, the plumbers, the pipe trades, all of these, the laborers, because I have a track record of standing up for unions and working people, working men and women. And, you know, that was Dan's leadership, and that's the kind of leadership I'll show as well.
You mentioned the working class, and a big part of your campaign is fighting for those working class people, which a lot of people here in mid-Michigan, that's what they are. Speaking more about fighting for them beyond the working class, what do you plan to do beyond those child care tax credits? What do you plan on doing in DC?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because what is really important, again, is more money in people's pockets, figuring out how to bring high-wage jobs here. So if you stop and think about 60% of our jobs in Michigan pay less than $50,000 a year, and really let it settle what that means in terms of take-home pay. That means when you're looking at housing and prescription drugs and childcare and groceries and gas, that eats your paycheck up really fast. So one, we need to figure out how to have jobs that get those paychecks up, but most importantly, create programs through the federal government that are easy to access, easy to get on the ground, that help working families pay for those a little bit better, right? So, housing, the programs that allow for help with a down payment to get into a house, being able to, there's help from childcare, as an example, coming from the federal government. So much red tape, so many regulations. It's near impossible to access. We've got too much of that. So I think it really is about forming relationships, being able to be pragmatic, and being willing to work with the other side of the aisle, not engage in a bunch of partisan nonsense, and get something done.
When it comes to going to DC, it seems so far away for a lot of people who live in this community. How do you plan to carry on their message and make sure that the people here in Mid-Michigan aren't forgotten about?
Well, first of all, it's important to know that I'm from here. I raised my kids here. I still am raising my kids here, and I think it's important that no matter where you're serving, whether it's in Washington or as I'm doing in Lansing, that you spend most of your time in the district, in the community. As you know, my opponent isn't from here, moved here to run for office. He wants the title. He wants to be in Washington with a nice title, but not really connecting to and communicating with the people who live here. And it's really important to me that we do that. We will have offices throughout the district. We will hire people from the district, and we'll make sure that the legacy of advocating for people in Mid-Michigan is carried forward in Washington. It's what I've done as a state senator in Lansing, and it's absolutely what I'll do in DC.
For the viewers who are watching this, is there anything else that you want them to know about you and running for this 8th Congressional District? Yeah,
I mean, I grew up in a working class home. My dad was a construction worker, and we really had this opportunity that when my parents worked really hard, that meant that we could own a home, and we could they could save for retirement, and every once in a while we went to Disney World growing up. And that opportunity just isn't available for enough people anymore. And that is what I've spent my career working on, and that is what I will work on in Washington. I think it's important that we focus on and protect the rights of working families and the pathway of working families to make sure that there's an opportunity for success for everyone. And also ensure that our fundamental rights are protected, and make sure that women's reproductive rights are protected, which is a big difference between me and my opponent, who is against reproductive freedom. So those are the differences. Fighting for our rights, fighting for our freedom, fighting for working families, versus somebody who has moved here from California in order to buy a congressional seat.
Well, State Senator McDonald Rivet, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And again, Kristen McDonald Rivet will be appearing on the November 5th ballot under the 8th Congressional District. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.